Good morning, class. I am Raya Afaldaya, and today, me and my group members will discuss about the first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta. But before that, let me give you a short background about him. Antonio Pigafetta was born between 1480 and 1491 in Vicenza, Republic of Venice, Italy. He is around 30 years old during Magellan's expedition. In his youth, he studied astronomy, geography, and cartography. He then served on the board of the Knights of Rhodes at the beginning of 16th century. He joined the expedition to the Spice Island, led by the explorer Ferdinand Magellan under the flag of King Charles I of Spain. Where did Pigafetta wrote the first voyage? On September 8, 1522, the crew of the Victoria cast anchor in the waters of Seville, Spain, having just completed the first circumnavigation of the world. Question is, what is the primary reason of Antonio Pigafetta in writing the first voyage around the world? For him, he wanted to tell how being in Barcelona in 1519. He heard about Magellan's expedition and being wishful to learn about the world he asked for, and obtained the permission to join the voyage. His account was also a major reference to the events leading to Magellan's arrival in the Philippines, his encounter with local leaders. His travel log is one of the most important primary sources in the study of pre-colonial Philippines. The documents reveal several insights, not just in the character of the Philippines during pre-colonial period, but also in how the fresh eyes of the European regard deeply unfamiliar terrain, environment, people, and culture. Give you a brief summary of first voyage around the world. On August 10, 1519, 5 ships departed from Seville for what was to become the first circumnavigation of the globe. The 5 ships named the Trinidad, the San Antonio, the Concepcion, the Santiago, and the Victoria, linked by fame for the name of its captain Magellan. Much of the expedition is known through the travelogue of one of the few crew members who returned to Spain, Antonio Pigafetta. Pigafetta's first voyage is a classic of discovery and exploration literature. It is also a remarkably accurate ethnographic and geographical account of circumnavigation, and one that has earned its reputation among modern historiographers and students of the early contacts between Europe and the East Indies.
Good day everyone. Today I'm going to discuss about the first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta. So who is Antonio Pigafetta? Antonio Pigafetta was a key player of one of the most amazing exploration trips, born in Vicenza in 1492. He was an Italian seafarer and a geographer. His own venture is fundamentally lies the fact that he took the part of the first globe circumnavigation between 1519 and 1522. After the murder of Ferdinand Magellan, the living detailed description of a manuscript was lost and rescued later in 1797. It considered today the most important documentary evidence relating the geographical discoveries in the past 17th century. His own narration about the first world circumnavigation was the greatest achievement in the history of Navy exploration and discovery. In this narration, we can be found a description of peoples, countries, goods, and even the languages that were spoken, of which the seafarer was trying to assemble some brief glossaries. So Pigafetta tells how being in Barcelona in 1519, he heard about Magellan's expedition and he was being wishful to learn about the world. So he asked and obtained a permission to join the voyage. So Magellan's fleet weighed anchored from Seville on August 10th on the same year, with 5 smaller vessels heading towards Canary Islands and down along the African coast and across the equator. From there, they sailed towards Brazil coast, where they stayed for some time, making supplies and weaving friendly contacts with the cannibalistic natives who dwelled there. So, upon the exploration continued, some of the vessels was drowned, but the whole crew managed to be saved. So, after the exploration, finally, they arrived in the Philippines, where they become acquainted with the natives who prove hospitality and welcome them as guests in King's Palace. The indigenous people affected by the celebration of the Mass and the crucifix planted in the island promised to convert to Christianity. So this is where the Christianity starts when Magellan arrived in the Philippines. So upon getting along with the native people, they developed commerce and trade, and the king and the queen and the other notables of Cebu were converted, until the entire population rapidly followed them in the new religion, which is Christianity. Shortly after happened the disastrous episode that changed the course of the expedition. Magellan took part in a conflict between some local tribes and was killed. The rest of the expedition managed to escape and retired, preparing to leave, but a trap by Magellan, set interpreter of the King of Cebu, led to another massacre of the Europeans. So this where Magellan was killed of the tribes here in Cebu. So after what happened in Cebu, after Magellan got killed, the remaining ships continued sailing towards Borneo and to the city of Brunei, where they managed to stop of them. From there, traveling southbound, they came to the Moluccas, and 27 months after the departure from Spain, they find an astrologer king who welcomed them. At this point, despite of the perspective of good business and rich exchanges, they would lie ahead their desire to return to Spain, urge them and push them to quick return.
Good day, everyone. I'm Trisha May Campanilla, and for today, I am going to discuss about the content and contextual analysis of primary sources in Philippine history. One of the most primary sources in reading Philippine history was all about the first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta. By the way, who is Antonio Pigafetta? Antonio Pigafetta was born in Vicenza in 1492, and he was an Italian seafarer and geographer who accompanied Ferdinand Magellan in his fateful circumnavigation around the world. Pigafetta was actually a chronicler commissioned by the King of Spain to accompany and document a voyage intended to expand the Spanish Empire. So that was Antonio Pigafetta. Now, let me give you an idea about this work, which is the first voyage around the world. Have you ever wondered who was the first man who traveled the world? Well, I know you know the answer, and that was Ferdinand Magellan. So the account of the first voyage around the world tells the story of Ferdinand Magellan and his journey throughout the world. During the voyage, which started on August 1519, Pigafetta collected extensive data concerning the geography, climate, flora, fauna, and the native inhabitants of the places that the expedition visited. So here's the history about the first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta. In Pigafetta's account, their fleet reached what he called the Ladrones Island, or the Island of the Thieves. He recounted that these people have no arms, but use sticks which have a fishbone at the end. They are poor but indigenous and great thieves, and for the sake of that, this island call as a Ladrone Islands. The Ladrone Islands is presently known as the Marianas Island. 10 days after, they reached Ladrone Island. Pigafetta called the Isle of Zamal, now Samal, but Magellan decided to land in another inhabited island for greater security where they can rest for a few days. On March 18, 1521, 9 men came to them and showed joy and eagerness seeing them. Magellan realized that the men are reasonable and welcomed them with food, drinks, and gifts. In return, the natives also gave them fish, palm wine, figs, and 2 coaches. The natives also gave them rice or umay, cocoas, and other food supplies. Pigafetta detailed in amazement and fascination the palm tree which bore fruits called cocho and wine. He also described what seemed like a coconut. Pigafetta characterized the people as very familiar and friendly, and willingly showed them different islands and the names of these islands. The fleet went to Homono Island or Homonhon, and there they found what Pigafetta referred to as the watering place of a good science. It is in this place where Pigafetta wrote that they found first signs of gold in the island. They named the island with nearby islands as the archipelago of Saint Lazarus. On March 25, 1521, Pigafetta said that they saw 2 balanghay or balangay, a long boat full of people in Mazava or Mazawa. After a few days, Magellan introduced to the king's brother. The brothers are Raha Siwao and Raha Kulambo, who ruled Mazawa and Butuan respectively, befriended Magellan and told him about Cebu, which they described to be a prosperous community where they could get more provisions. Pigafetta reported that they saw mines of gold. He also described the king as the most handsome of all men that he saw in that place. The leader, king of the Balangay, as Pigafetta referred, sent his men to the ship of Magellan's, but they got declined. Magellan sent his interpreter to the king asking for money for their needs. He impressed that he came into the island as a friend and not as an enemy. The two then expressed their desire to become brothers. On March 31, it was Easter Sunday. Magellan ordered the chaplain to preside a mass by the shore, and this was considered as the first mass. Pigafetta reported both kings participated in the mass. The 2 kings went to kiss the cross, but they not offered nothing when offertory of the mass came. In the elevation of the body of the Lord, they were kneeling and adored Lord with joined hands. The king and his men called their god Abba. After the mass, Magellan explained the signs of his emperor that he was ordered to plant it in the places that we would reach. He also explained the benefits of the cross for the people of king, and the king allowed for the cross to be planted. After 7 days, Magellan and his men looked and learned the island of Ceylon or Leyte, Bohol, and Cebu. which is Cebu is known as the largest and the richest island. When April 26, Datu Zula, a chief of Mactan, went to Magellan to ask for a boat full of men to fight against a chief named Lapu-Lapu. Magellan offered 3 boats instead and went to Mactan to fight against Lapu-Lapu. They numbered 49 in total and fight against 1,500 islanders of Mactan. Magellan divided his followers into 2 bands. The musketeers and crossbowmen began the attack, but the firing was not effective. The native army moved down upon them like a cloud, throwing javelins and spears. Some of them singled out Magellan's. They threw at him lances pointed with iron. Magellan, seeing that the odds were against him in such a contest, sought to break their lines by firing their houses. The natives now fell upon him and ran him through with lances. He tried to rise up to see if his men were safe. He did not call for assistance, but to the last sought to secure the safety of his men. In fact, he never seemed to so much as think of himself in the whole contest. It was thus that his life went out, and his heart ceased to beat. Magellan was left died on the sand on April 27, 1521. The natives refuses to surrender his body. 8 of his own men and 4 native allies who had become Christians perished with him. There was one man who was true to the admiral of the end. He was wounded with him but survived. It was he that saw that the admiral had forgotten himself at the hour of the final conflict. So that was all about the Philippine history. This document is according to Antonio Pigafetta, who was actually the first chronicler who accompanied Ferdinand Magellan in his first circumnavigation of the world. I hope you learned something. Thank you!
What I've learned about Magellan was very important to history. I learned that you can do whatever you want as long as you put your mind to it. When Magellan died, his interpreter finished the journey, but Magellan still got most of the credit. I also learned that if you are smart and you really believe in yourself, you can do it. Magellan had still some things named in his honor, including the Magellatic penguin, the Magellan's probe, an unmanned ship to Venus, a woodpecker, a band named Magellan, a cloud, Magellan's Aerospace, a Canadian aerospace manufacturer, and Magellan's old name for the city of Punta Arenas in Chile. Magellan was a brave and adventurous explorer, although he himself did not complete the journey. His crew proved that the world was round. His work as an explorer was important to developing new maps and developing new ideas of ways to get to the East Indies.